Well, let's just dive right into this, because this is a topic that's going to touch almost all of us eventually. As we age, and especially as we cross that big milestone of 40, we start to experience some pretty undeniable physical shifts. It's a completely natural progression. But so often, our mindset doesn't quite adjust to match what our bodies are telling us. We keep trying to run the exact same playbook we used in our 20s and 30s, and then we sit there wondering why we feel so constantly drained. That is exactly what we're unpacking today. We're going to look really closely at a concept that could completely change your approach to healthy aging. The title of today's explainer really hits the nail on the head: Why Recovery Matters More Than Exercise After 40.
So let me ask you something I hear all the time. Have you noticed that your body just doesn't bounce back the way it once did? Maybe a late night out feels, significantly harder to recover from. Or perhaps a really busy week at work or just keeping up with the family leaves you feeling absolutely wiped out by Friday evening. Or you might even find that your standard exercise routine suddenly requires way more recovery time than it did just a few years ago. I want to validate that right now. If you're feeling this, it is not a failure of effort on your part. You aren't losing your drive. This is a very natural physiological change, and recognizing it is literally the first step toward handling it wisely.
Now, when we feel our energy slipping or our results kind of stalling out, the common knee-jerk instinct is to simply do more. We try to just force our way through the fatigue, right? We think, oh, I need more workouts, more effort, more activity. But the paradigm-shifting truth here, the reality we really need to embrace, is that the missing piece isn't doing more. It's recovering better. Today, we're going to look at why focused recovery is actually the real secret to maintaining your health and energy as you get older. So, let's get into section 1, the post-40 reality shift. Before we go any further, I want to be absolutely clear about one thing. Exercise remains incredibly vital. Moving your body is essential for strength, mobility, and cardiovascular health. But we have to understand what recovery actually is. It's the crucial phase where tissue repair, hormonal reset, like your cortisol levels finally dropping, and physical adaptation actually occur. A lot of people mistakenly think that progress happens right during the activity itself. We think we're getting stronger while we lift the weight or run that mile. But in reality, the activity is really just the stimulus. The actual physical benefits, the strengthening, the real adaptations, all of that magic only happens afterward, during recovery. Without adequate recovery, even your absolute best, healthiest habits become significantly less effective. Which brings us right to section 2, the power of quality sleep. When we talk about recovery tools, there is absolutely nothing that rivals sleep. It is the single most powerful systemic recovery mechanism we have. Let's take a closer look at what's actually happening behind the scenes while you rest. The restorative power of sleep is just immense. During the night, your brain is actively organizing information. Your body is physically repairing tissues that got broken down during the day, largely thanks to these amazing surges in human growth hormone that only happen when you're in deep rest. On top of that, your hormonal systems are undergoing a massive reset, and your core energy is being restored. Just think about these invisible but absolutely vital processes for a second. When your sleep suffers, every single one of these processes takes a hit. And when your recovery suffers at this fundamental level, literally everything else in your day becomes so much harder to manage. Now, let's shift gears slightly to section 3, mental and emotional fatigue. It's so important that we broaden our concept of exhaustion well beyond just physical exertion. We usually tend to think of recovery strictly in terms of, resting our muscles after a long run. But mental recovery matters just as much. Emotional recovery matters. In our modern life, the nervous system rarely gets a break. We are constantly surrounded by stimulation. Between demanding work schedules, family responsibilities, those endless phone notifications, deadlines, and just a general information overload, our nervous systems are pretty much always on. This creates a steady, quiet accumulation of fatigue. And this is exactly why you can feel completely, utterly exhausted even if you haven't done a single minute of intense physical activity. Sometimes your body isn't asking for more effort. It's desperately asking for a restoration of your nervous system. And all this continuous mental stress directly compromises your cognitive function. When mental fatigue builds up, concentration simply declines. Memory begins to suffer. Even simple decision-making suddenly becomes incredibly difficult. Your brain needs dedicated recovery, just as much as your physical body does.
And as we age, prioritizing this mental downtime becomes increasingly essential for our long-term brain health.
All right, let's move along to section 4, redefining how we recover.
We need to completely shift our perspective here, because restoration does not always mean just sitting still on the couch doing absolutely nothing. In fact, there are some really wonderful active ways to support your body's recovery process. These are activities that aid restoration without placing heavy demands on a system that's already tired. Active recovery, things like gentle walks, which actively flush metabolic waste right out of your muscles, can actually speed up restoration. Dedicated stretching routines, focused mobility work to keep those joints healthy, or mindful relaxation practices all play a massive role. These gentle movements promote blood flow and ease tension. They're building you back up rather than breaking you down. We're ultimately striving for a healthy balance between productive activity and unnecessary exhaustion. Think about two totally different people for a moment. One pushes themselves to the absolute limit every single day, completely ignoring their fatigue and neglecting adequate rest. The other carefully balances their effort with focused restoration. Over time, who do you think is going to be more consistent? It's the person who understands recovery, for sure. Sustainable health isn't built through occasional exhausting extremes. It's built through long-term consistency, and balancing your effort with true recovery is exactly what makes that consistency possible. Which brings us to section 5, making recovery part of progress. We really need to address a somewhat toxic misconception that so many of us hold on to. Very often, we view recovery strictly as a reward. We tell ourselves, well, I'll finally rest when everything on my to-do list is finished. But the reality of adult life is that the list is rarely ever finished. There's always another task, another email, another responsibility. If you wait to earn your rest, you're literally never going to get it. The mindset shift we need here is seeing recovery as a process. It belongs directly inside your daily schedule, not as something tacked on to the end after the schedule is done. Treating recovery as a non-negotiable process is what builds the physical and mental resilience you need to handle life's inevitable curveballs. And remember, recovery is highly personal. What works perfectly for one person might not be exactly what you need. For some folks, the primary focus just has to be getting a solid 8 hours of quality sleep. For others, it's making sure they get time outdoors to properly disconnect. It might involve prayer, meditation, or quiet reflection. Or perhaps it's simply dedicating time to sit and read in a quiet room. The ultimate goal isn't to just copy someone else's routine. It's to tune into your own life and identify what uniquely helps your own body and mind naturally restore themselves. This philosophy really is the cornerstone of healthy aging. It's not simply about pushing harder, it's about becoming wiser. It's about understanding when to work, understanding when to move, and crucially, understanding when it's time to recover. True strength and lasting vitality are built through strategic restoration just as much as they are through intense effort. If you're feeling overwhelmingly tired, mentally foggy, or just physically drained, it's time to evaluate your routine. Acknowledge that fatigue is not a weakness. It's simply a signal from your body. Now, if you found these insights helpful in rethinking your own approach to aging and wellness, please take a quick moment to like this explainer, subscribe to the channel, and share it with friends or family who might really benefit from hearing this message. I'm going to leave you with this final takeaway from the folks at Renewed After 40. Recovery isn't the opposite of progress, it is the progress. So the next time you feel completely exhausted, I want you to ask yourself honestly, do I really need to give more effort today, or do I just need more recovery? Take care of yourselves, honor your rest, and I will see you in the next explainer.